I'm a survivor of sex trafficking, founder and frontline worker of Walk With Me, an organization that has been working 24/7 on the ground with victims of sex labor for the last 4 years here in Canada. 90% of them were Canadian girls between the age of 15 to 21 that were rescued from domestic sex trafficking. I originally entered the sex industry when I was forced into it by traffickers, and sometime after my rescue, I went back to the business for a few months responding to a huge financial crisis. I already knew what I got myself into, and I voluntarily returned. But by my choice to prostitute myself to make a living and to avoid to become a homeless person, and also to be able to put food on my table. In the media in these days, we hear the voices of women who are sex workers who demand that their human rights be respected in their choice of work. Those women, though, represent a small percentage of women in prostitution. Studies estimate the number of women voluntarily making an informed choice to do sex work is between 1 to 10%. I speak for the other 90% of prostituted women and men whose voices are not largely being heard in this debate, precisely because they are still trafficked and they are still forced to do this work. I speak for the 60 to 95% of women in the sex trade based on numerous studies who were sexually molested or assaulted as children. I was sexually molested between the age of 12 to 17, and that background sets up to be abused again. I speak for the 70 to 95% of people who were physically assaulted while in sex work. My first encounter when I was sex trafficked was in a massage place where 3 Russian men entered into the room, and I was nonetheless just become a meat. That 3 men just started to take a little piss out of me. And I was lying on a table, on this very cold massage table, and I closed my eyes and I looked up, and I was thinking that if anyone would have seen this, would anyone come and rescue me, only to find out later that my so-called bodyguard was watching the whole thing on video. I was indoor, it was safe, they paid for their services, but nobody told me the rules because I was new to it. So I was raped for about an hour by 3 different men. I speak for the hundreds of Canadian girls that I have met and talked to and rescued in the last 4 years who have been and continue to be raped, violated, and exploited against their will. First of all, prostitution is not a profession, it's an oppression. 90% of the time it's the only job in the world where you can go to work, and every day there's a chance that you could be killed or hurt by your employer, the Johns or the pimps. The dangers inherent in sex work are well documented in researches. Prostitution always involves a power of imbalance between a customer who pays to have their pleasure met and a person who is hired to act like a sex puppet. Prostitution is rarely, if ever, about 2 consulting adults. For example, the husband and a father of 3 children will highly unlikely to go to his wife and kids and ask for their consent for daddy to be able to go and have unprotected sex that evening from a prostitute. And again, absolutely, there's no laws protecting the wife and children from the ripple effects that is to come afterwards. I speak for the vast majority of people in a sex trade this is not a freely made choice among many choices, but for whom it is indeed an issue of human rights, rights of liberty, equality, dignity, safety, all of which are being ripped from us on a daily basis. There does not appear to be a perfect answer in this debate. The rights of some will be curtailed to support the rights of others. Sometimes that is what laws is forced to do. The only way that they can be encouraged to seek help is by decriminalizing their part in prostitution and by creating an environment of safety and support that gives them valuable exit options. The legislation attempts to do that. There are 2 groups of people impacted most by this legislation. Pro-prostitution advocates speak loudly and with resources behind them. But there is the other voice of those trapped, and tortured needs to be heard as well, and they deserve to be protected by this country. Trafficked men and women and those others who would rather do something else if they had a viable choice don't have the same voice. We need the government of Canada to do that voice for them, and we believe that Bill C-36 is that legislation that will protect our most vulnerable. Thank you.